My tale dates back to 3 years ago, yet it lingers in my memory like a persistent hard drive, impossible to erase. We shared 15 years of wedded bliss until, evidently, everyone's got their own expiry date. After our second child's birth, I ended up having an urgent operation that required the removal of all my female organs. A month later, it dawned on me that my husband had already found a stand-in for me. For several years, I'd been going to the sauna weekly with a friend. I never thought twice about it, always trusted him, gave him the freedom to go where he wished, whether it was to the south, a disco, or the sauna. At the sauna, there were two girlfriends. One happened to be a medic specializing in my condition and had been quite supportive. The other had recently lost her husband, and in the aftermath of her grief, she ceased my husband just 2 months later. It stands to reason that both were vulnerable and needy, but where's the moral compass, right? This woman, knowing my full medical history through our shared friend, and aware that I had a 2-year-old, should have, by all rights, been in a state of mourning herself. Yet clearly, remorse didn't hold them back. My husband began arriving home later from the bathhouse and calling less frequently during work. Still, he complained in bed, possibly for appearances, about not having enough sex. I tried to comfort him as best as I could. By the time the doctors gave him the green light, he was already juggling 2 roles. After 15 years of marriage, you're well acquainted with your spouse's desires. Then out of nowhere, there are changes, sparking my suspicions. He came back from the bathhouse talking only about his friends, one name more frequently than others, plus he was glued to his phone, supposedly playing games. That's when I started my investigation and set up surveillance. I discovered everything about her. Deliberately, I grew indifferent to my husband in bed and began dropping hints that he should seek a mistress for pleasure. He purposely sent me and our children on a 2-week vacation to Egypt so he could have his own complete freedom. Throughout the trip, he constantly questioned me about my seriousness regarding my suspected affair. Upon our return, just 1 day later, we had a heated argument, all according to his plan, as he needed an excuse to see her. A week later, after a night of drinking with friends, he confessed. I played the role of the instigator, deliberately coaxing him to reveal every detail. My response to him was nothing short of shocking. I allowed him to meet with her between the hours of 9 p.m. and 11 p.m., wanting to test whether he would actually go through with it or not. And go through with it, he did, for 3 days. I needed some time to ponder over what I should do. After all, I have 2 children, one of whom is just 2 years old. But when he returned from his affair on the 3rd day, attempting to shower me with affection, I finally uttered the words, "We need to get a divorce." The night unfolded into a heavy ordeal filled with heartfelt conversations, tears, apologies, promises never to repeat his mistake, and declarations of my irreplaceability. But I stood my ground. In a fit of desperation, he threatened to take our little one away from me. I was caught off guard, and my tone immediately shifted. By 9 a.m. the next morning, he texted her, declaring that their affair was officially over. It appeared that he was settled at home. However, the flurry of texts on his phone suggested otherwise. A week later, armed with a printout, I confronted him, brandishing the phrase, "No one has yet succeeded in duping me." It was another torturous night, filled with arguments and apologies, yet I reluctantly decided to give him another shot. Even under my surveillance, his phone betrayed him when it flashed a message from her while in my grasp. I arranged to meet her. From the secrecy of the backseat, where I was hidden, I observed as she comfortably settled herself in our car as though it belonged to her, while my husband was painfully aware of my presence. The scene was almost comically tragic. She refused to engage with me, and my questions about her moral compass went unanswered. though I was certain this wasn't the conclusion. As the weeks dragged on, my anxiety remained, rightly so, as he soon planned a trip to Egypt with his friends. Although I had no initial objections, one by one, his friends dropped out, leaving room for suspicion. It was evident he was planning to take her. Amid this revelation, I maintained a facade of serenity, all the while orchestrating the hotel bookings under my watchful eye, ensuring there were available accommodations for an unexpected guest. Me, with everything set, I was poised to intercept them and bring this charade to a decisive closure. When he had settled on the hotel, he made several phone calls to different travel agencies. Imagine my astonishment when he received the contract, ticket, and insurance at his doorstep, all tailored for one person. But I couldn't bring myself to believe in such extraordinary coincidences. I recollected the girl and during the night managed to dig up her phone number from the call history. And then through her number, I found her on social media, along with her circle of friends. It was a long, sleepless night, but with his phone in hand, even if everything were to be wiped clean, the story would remain intact. I followed the path he had taken, first through social media and then to the travel agency. I still wasn't entirely certain if he would be flying with her, but the provision of such a personalized service made me apprehensive. It was just 10 days until the flight, and I needed to sort things out. He was on his best behavior, preparing for the journey and splurging on new gear, which was a bit cringeworthy. Essentially, he was gearing up for his adventure while I was sorting out mine. I opted to leave 2 days after him and booked myself a 5-day stay. Naturally, taking the kids wasn't an option, as I faced 2 possible scenarios: either arriving to find myself alone or in her presence. I made arrangements with a family member to look after the children in my absence. These days have been dreadful. I'm planning to abandon the children and accompany my spouse to resolve matters. But how does one resolve them without taking any action? It irritated me to think that they would sober up, only for my husband to approach me with a falsehood. Yet if I stay, I won't ascertain the truth. What if it's genuine, and I mistakenly believe it's not? I was also open to any arrangement that if he were with her, I would turn a blind eye in return, giving myself another week to pack up and relocate to another city, where I could settle down and quietly seek a divorce. I was prepared, but 4 days before our departure, we found ourselves sitting in the kitchen. My husband's phone was resting on the table when a text message appeared. I decided to seize the phone, and he too reached for it, but I managed to grab it first. And that's when it all commenced. A tug-of-war for the phone ensued, as his reaction indicated that something was amiss. He erupted, shouting, "You're out of your mind." I relinquished my hold and ceased the struggle for the phone. We returned to the kitchen, where I revealed my unwavering belief that he was rendezvousing with her. He countered by prodding me with documents, displaying the number and an airline ticket. I was unable to substantiate my suspicions, and he held steadfastly to his position. I asked him to take it down a notch. I rang up my daughter and got her number, and after she left, he kept ranting that I'd lost my marbles, saying he didn't even remember his girlfriend anymore. I punched in the travel agent's number and inquired if a third room could still be added to the existing booking. She told me they initially booked 2 rooms but later switched to 1, and he's currently on hold, but we needed to verify the plane tickets. Thanking her, I ended the call. My husband, having overheard, was dumbstruck. I mentioned that the final piece of the puzzle had fallen into place, spelling out divorce. I revealed that I had been aware all along about his affair. It was an extended conversation, difficult to articulate and surreal. By morning, I was a wreck, crying and repeatedly asking why he did this to me. If he had already confessed and couldn't leave her, He could have told me everything calmly. Love had faded, feelings had shifted to another. I'm no monster, I would understand, and wouldn't hold him back. A peaceful divorce, and all would be fine. But he chose to deceive me, and I had to prove each time that I suggested he have a mistress, despite knowing about her for 2 months, although it was all just a ruse. Outwardly, I appeared cool, but inside, my heart was breaking. He had a choice. Did she become more important than me in just 4 months? They robbed me of 10 precious years. After I had divulged everything I knew about the situation, it was clear he hadn't expected me to be so well informed. Overwhelmed by the moment, I buried my face in my hands and wept. He gently scooped me up as if I were a child and comforted me on the sofa, softly patting my head until I drifted off to sleep. I was roused by a gentle touch on my cheek and his voice offering, "I brought you coffee. I've canceled the trip for her sake." Puzzled, I queried, "What about the money?" His response was swift, "No refunds." Fully alert now, I pressed, "What do you mean?" "Did you also cover the cost for the vouchers?" Impressive. Promptly, I phoned the travel agency, introduced myself as his wife, and inquired whether it was feasible to alter the passenger names and if any flights were still available. They confirmed it was no issue. Next, I reached out to my sister-in-law, giving her a brisk 5-minute ultimatum. Either she could accept part of the additional money she had planned to pay, or she could reimburse us. I firmly stated that I would sell my spot on the trip, and she might end up traveling with an unknown companion. Thus my husband, son, and I set off for Egypt, while our daughter remained home to focus on her studies. Every day, there were grand floral arrangements, endless chats, albeit all when the kiddo was already in dreamland, and during the day, a picture-perfect family. The sun played its part, no sign of the mistress, minds at ease, everything seemed just peachy. But it was time to return. My mind recalled everything. Trust was shattered. What to do next loomed large. I grasped that she craved a man, and post the rendezvous in the car, she didn't get it. He backstabbed me and her, yet she was all set to take off with him. I winced each time a text popped up. I resolved to head to the bathhouse with my husband. It was off limits for him now. He stood his ground for a good while, but my relentless convincing won him over in the end. Thursday rolled around, and off to the bathhouse we went. I had no clear plan, only knew that where things began, they needed to end. He entered first, followed by me. My friend was already there, but hadn't noticed me, seated as she was with her back turned. Hearing his voice, a grin spread across her face. You could see it lighting up her cheeks. We stripped off, my husband headed to the men's section, while I strode into the women's part, straight past her. I stopped beside her and declared we needed a word. She curtly responded, saying there was nothing to discuss. I stood my ground, noticing her uneven haircut. I quipped, had a rough shave. She had just been handed a steaming cup of tea, which promptly landed on my face. Chaos erupted. An all-out brawl ensued. The gentleman chased after my spouse, claiming that your husband was causing havoc. I didn't strike her extensively, just a few slaps, and after the initial one, I realized my height and strength advantage. She awaited her hubby's emergence, and I pursued him relentlessly. In essence, there were numerous incidents, but the crucial point is that he didn't defend her. Perhaps that's what I had anticipated. Upon receiving the desired response, I concluded that now, following such disgrace, they would lose all desire for interaction. I hailed a taxi, and we departed for home. Since that time, 3 years have elapsed. My husband remains unchanged. I feel cherished. He is an exemplary father. It seems one can overcome their own pride and extend forgiveness.